Well, on that note, hi, Joel.
Hi.
Everybody, you just need to know that Joel's super spiritual tonight.
I'm not. I'm losing it. I just pounded the table. I had my my stupid microphone doesn't work anymore, and then
And then
my
his
power
house
went
went
out.
insane.
I have a goblin or ghoul in my house that turned the electricity off momentarily, and then it kick started my uh, carbon monoxide detector, and my mic still doesn't work. And I just told Steve I need to go on a bike ride, otherwise I'm going to kill myself. So that's where
Ladies
I'm
and
at.
gentlemen, sweet. Well, I suppose you're wondering why we've gathered you here tonight. And that's this all started off just as a real quick deal to say that we're going to do a rerun this week.
And you know what's perfect about this, man, is
What?
that the rerun that we're going to do is exactly the episode I need to re-listen to.
Of course, it's all about you.
Well, that we all need to re-listen to
There
because
we go.
it was Mary Stancavage's
Yep.
podcast. We've got permission for her to rerun this.
Yeah, which is
Before
really
we-
thanks, Mary. It's really
Thank
fantastic.
you, Mary.
Yeah.
I'm about to lose my shit. So I need to be reminded of the wisdom of Mary Stancavage and so do the listeners.
I'm so glad we're doing this, even if it is just to do an intro thing.
I'm trying to be better, Steve.
I know you are, Joel. Buddy, you're doing great.
I'm not doing that great.
Looking real good, Meyer.
Looking real good. God damn it.
All right. So yeah, this week is brought to you by I don't know, by
it's this week is brought to you by Mercury and retrograde.
There you go.
That's why my shit's not working. I'm going to blame it on a planet.
There you go.
It appearing to spin differently. That's
Sure.
what I'm going to blame this on.
Hey, that works for me. All right. Well, everybody, we'll hopefully be back next week and enjoy this blessed rerun of us talking to Mary Stancavage. It's a delight.
And my Venmo is joel.egger if anybody wants to donate so I can get a new mic.
Otherwise, and email us at ttbbpodcast@gmail.com and Instagram at trying to be better podcast, trying to speak clearer.
Woo!
Yeah. All right, man.
All right. I love you, Steve.
Love you too.
It's a good thing we've got things that prevent us because I don't know how well
I just want to point out, Joel, that the line's pretty low tonight for offing yourself. Like my house was weird and my mic doesn't work. That's pretty low, dude.
The mic was weird of the podcast that I started with my best friend and
right. And now
the house that I bought.
Right. And now you're gonna go for a ride on a beautiful evening and
everything's fine, dude.
Everything's fine. Nothing's fucked here, dude.
Well, enjoy the
Joel,
the Buddhist wisdom of Mary Stancavage.
Yeah, okay. All right, later.
Later.
I've got 3 things to drink here, so I'm almost set.
You're good.
Great, you're hydrated.
You're hydrated. I think we're good to go. I hit the thing. We're going, so we're live.
Welcome to the Trying to Be Better with Joel and Steve podcast. The conversation has already started. We're very excited. We have a special guest today. This woman is a Buddhist teacher, practitioner, podcaster, all around amazing person who I was introduced to by my brother Colin. Her podcast, she records her Dharma talks from Burbank, California. And her name is Mary Stancavage, and give a big Trying to Be Better welcome to Mary. We're so glad you're here, Mary. Thank you for taking your time.
Oh, thank you, Joel, and thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a delight. It's a delight. I'm just blown away that anybody has heard of me outside of Burbank. So.
Well, you have a couple of people in my circle that have listened, because my brother and then our friend Austin, and then I've turned other folks on to your talks, and you have a way of talking about the Dharma that is, I think, topical, relevant, and it's really centered on the heart and the heart practices. I think some talks and teachers I listen to that are very beneficial sometimes get very psychological or get very, technical or very, very heavy in the suttas. And you have a way of translating that in a way that's just been really beneficial to me. So
thank you. I'm really happy to hear that. I really believe, I mean, I think that's why I came to this practice, is because I was able to translate it into my everyday life. And so how do we make it usable? How can, pragmatic Buddhism, it's like this stuff is applicable.
I was
Buddha
listening
said teaching. Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
I was listening to it was a recent podcast of yours on the shame one. And I love, and along what you were just saying, like the term snarkasm really kind of made my day. Like, okay, I can totally relate to this person. That was perfect.
Thanks.
It's just real, and that's because I'm coming to this through Joel pretty specifically.
Yeah.
And so he's been on this path longer than I have. But I've just appreciated your approach to this, because I've listened to everybody that he's recommended, and some of it has landed really where it feels good to me, and you're one of those people. And then some of it is more of an exercise in academia almost, which I also appreciate, but it's a different experience.
Totally. There's the broad spectrum, and different things apply to different folks, and different things attract different people at different times. So it's good to have that choice, and it's good to find folks that you can relate to. I mean, that's really important.
So help us out, Mary. I'm curious to know, and I think one of the things we're really wanting to introduce you to our listeners, how did you come to this practice, and what are the things that led to your work now? And I don't know if you can sum that up, but we'd love to hear sort of how you became a teacher, maybe even a practitioner first. I know that I've listened to a few of your talks, and I know that you've had some different pursuits here and there, and and I know I'm like, and I want you have an obsession with baseball, and I want to know more about that. And so, like, how do you where did you come to the work that you're doing now? What's the origin story of Mary Stancavage?
What's the origin story of Mary Stancavage?
Like you're a superhero.
That's a very specific question. Let me see if
where did you grow up? Like, are you a California person?
No, I was born and raised in New York City, in Manhattan.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Thus the snarkasm. I come by it naturally. So, and I ended up, when I was 18, I moved to California. My brother lived out here, and he sent me an airplane ticket. So, you want to move to California? I said, sure. And I came out, and I ended up in LA, going to graduate school at UCLA, and then I stayed when I landed here. And so I've been here a long time, 40 years. And
what were you studying then? Like, what was your academic pursuit then?
Archaeology.
Okay.
So I've done time as an archaeologist.
Done time.
Done time.
Yeah.
Sometimes
sentenced to archaeology.
Well, I heard you mention in a podcast that also something about spreadsheets and data analyzation.
Yeah, because I worked my way through school by being an office person.
Sure.
And when I partied my way out of graduate school and
sweet.
into it was ugly, it wasn't sweet.
We know, we get it.
Yeah,
we know.
I know, you know. And into corporate America, and
that almost sounds worse.
No, I have to give a shout out. I worked for Xerox Corporation, which is amazing. I can't speak to it now. I haven't been there for a while, but when I was there, it was a really fabulous organization, really ahead of the game.
Xerox gets credit. Xerox gets credit. I'm a tech guy by trade, and Xerox, they innovated a lot of things. A lot of our modern systems are directly attributed to Xerox. So I have a lot of respect there on that level.
Absolutely. And culturally, also socially, and, affirmative action, and really a lot of things. So I can't say a bad thing about it. I know people had a lot of issues with corporate America, but I had a really good experience with a really good company. And that's where I got into number crunching. and analysis and organizational stuff. And so that served me to, that's how I made my living. That's where I met my husband. He was a tech. He was a Xerox repairman. And then I mentioned that while I'm in recovery too, and that's how and got sober through 12 steps, and that they talk about meditation there, one of the prayer and meditation. And so I started getting interested in it, over 30 something years ago, but I never studied it formally. I just kind of did it on my own. And then I started reading some books. Pema Chodron, I think, was the first Buddhist book I remember reading, and it just was like, whoa, it was like light bulbs went off.
Yeah.
And I said, this is my program. This is what I'm trying to do with my life. I said, yeah, this is it. And I didn't do too much formally. I think the first real formal practice I did was Sharon Salzberg's Loving Kindness. I read that book, and I did it. I did it solidly for a year, and I surprisingly started seeing some changes in my life where
funny how that works out, right? It's like they tell us to do prayer and meditation. I'm like, yeah, I say the words at the thing, that's good, but actually doing it daily, it's like, holy moly, this stuff works.
And exactly. And it would come as a surprise, like the word compassion was not in my vocabulary, especially for me. And then when I found myself, being kind to myself, I'm like, whoa, this is a direct result of doing this practice, doing this meditation every day, because, you extend compassion and the loving, the heart practices. That's what that book is all about. And then Noah Levine moved to Los Angeles, and I read his book, and I started sitting with him, and that was my formal entree into this practice. So, and then he started a teacher training program and invited me to be a part of it.
Wow. And so when did that teacher training start for you then?
2008. So 12, almost 13, about 13 years ago, because we started in February that year. So,
and that was is that Against the Stream?
It was just as Against the Stream was opening. Yeah. We opened in February 2008, and we started that weekend. So I was part of his first teacher training cohort, and I started teaching before I graduated, before I finished the training. I started a Saturday afternoon class, which is still going. We're in my 13th or 14th year. I always have to use my fingers to add it up every year.
That's cool though, that it's gotten to that point where you're using both hands to count the amount of years that you've been teaching.
Toes.
I mean, yeah, very good. Wow. So, what have you found as I guess the transition from corporate America into, Buddhist teaching? What does the work look like? I mean, I can imagine that you probably get this idea projected onto you of some sort of, the difference between a teacher and a guru, maybe this idea that like, you've got it all figured out. And I know from your talks, you're very transparent about all the things, that you're one of those, you're like, I teach theater. When I talk to my students, I'm very open about stuff because it's good for a student to kind of know the humanity. How have you navigated that as a meditation teacher?
I think it comes from my 12-step background.
Yeah.
And the learning how to share and speaking. I had a sponsor who was a circuit speaker, and when she couldn't do it, she'd give him my number. And so I did a lot of speaking, and so I think I got used to that. Plus there was a lot of people in recovery in my Sangha, in my community. So it just was how I grew up in the Dharma, being transparent. That's how I came to it, because I have seen what you talk about listening to other teachers, and there's maybe a little tidbit of personal story, but it's very, very sutta driven or psychological, philosophical driven rather than personal. This is how it works in my life. So that's how I came to that. You asked about the transition from corporate America. I had left Xerox in the mid-90s because the job I was doing was not a good job for me, and there wasn't any place else to go. So I left for a couple of years, and then they called me back, and I went back as a contract, not doing the same job, but having fun. And I was there for 10 years. And then my old professor from UCLA called me, and I ended up going back into archaeology. So for 10 years, I was doing both archaeology and Xerox. And it was at the latter half of this time that I started practicing and studying. And then when we opened Against the Stream, I left archaeology and Xerox and became director.
Oh yeah. Okay.
When we opened.
I think that's a really fascinating thing, Mary, because there's people close to me that are, mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s that are kind of having these moments of like, the regeneration of their experiences. Maybe this isn't right for me. Maybe I should shake it up. Maybe I'm being called or pulled in different directions. And it sounds like you've navigated that with a lot of grace. That you were able to, you say it now as graceful. Maybe it wasn't graceful then. Maybe talk about the mess. I mean, was that a hard sort of calling to leave some of that behind, the stability of that?
Yeah, very much so. My growing up was full of, I learned how to not be decisive. And I learned how to not make decisions because I was fearful. What if I picked the wrong one? Then I'd be doomed. I thought there was only, you had to pick the right way or you were screwed.
Yeah.
And so when I was leaving Xerox in the mid-90s that first time, and I had nothing lined up. I knew that I would never, I knew archaeology and this one particular job. So I was never going to get hired for anything. So it was so much fear. But I just had to be willing to let go. And I think one of the insights I had at that point in time was the recognition that we can't figure anything out. And all we have is this present moment. And all we have is what's in front of our face, the next step. That's all we have. And that is just right around the time I started reading Pema Chodron. And so there was this confluence of my actual life and then the teaching that came into it. And I was open to see it and open to hear it. So I went, oh yeah, this is it. I think I quit my job and then I read the book and just kind of moved into that. But it was a painful 9 months. I think what started it was I quit smoking. And then I realized I was like, I cannot do this job if I can't smoke. There's no way.
As former smokers, we get it.
I totally get that.
It was like,
I was kind of wondering about that with you because I listened to Josh Corda describe his experience wanting to get out of whatever he was doing for a living, his quote day job, and just wanting to just quit and just become a full-time teacher, and how that just wasn't a practical reality. He couldn't just do that, and so he had to sit on it, and the path unfolded in front of him where it was just a gradual process. And that was just really nice to hear, because it's like the person that gets sober and immediately wants to become a treatment counselor,
right?
I start sitting and trying to meditate for 6 or 7 months. I'm like, I want to be a teacher, it's really, I have to share this with everybody. And that's not something that's going to happen in my life right now, and or maybe it shouldn't, I don't know, but it's just interesting to hear people's. I'm glad to hear about your transition and kind of how that worked out. It's interesting.
Yeah, that was just when I left Xerox. It was 10 or a decade later, 12 years later, when I left to move into Against the Stream. And that was, I was never a full-time teacher. That was my job, was director of the organization. And so leaving Xerox, leaving a known quantity to move into a job where my salary was dependent on donations in 2008. And if you remember what was happening in 2008.
I was in the rooms of recovery in LA in 2008, and it took a lot of us out. I mean, that stability, that upheaval. I mean, a lot of folks were coming back into the room saying, I just relapsed because I lost all this. It's like, it was a tumultuous time for anybody seeking anything spiritually to step out like that and to kind of take a leap. That's a little unnerving, Mary. And it's brave. It's cool. I mean,
but it made perfect sense. It's what I wanted to do. But trust me, my head was like, I would cry in the shower. I would take a shower every day and sob. And then I went on retreat for 4 days. And all I had in my head was, what have I done? What if this, if only, what if, blah, 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 blah. And then the instruction was just come back, just come back, just come back. And it took a few days. And then I realized the fear wasn't what's going to happen. Am I going to make enough money? What have I left behind? What have I done? The fear that when I finally made some peace and quiet was that I wasn't going to be good enough, that I wasn't going to be able to do it, which is not anything that I was worried about.
Right. And I think I know that I stepped away from kind of a stable job into something very unstable. And now it's very stable as a full-time professor. But I remember all of those insecurity, and Steve has talked about his recent new position with that. Like, I'm not going to be good enough. It's not going to work. I'm going to screw this up. It's almost like we want to self-sabotage this so that when it does fall apart, we can say, see, totally. But what the practice has taught me is to trust yourself, to be kind and loving, but to trust yourself a little bit, which is, I'm sure that message is embedded in recovery. I just missed it. I didn't hear it. And I'm grateful I found it elsewhere to then apply back to recovery. But
that's you kind of something I wanted to bring up. And Mary, you started off the talk with this is that I did not start having what I would consider actual compassion, especially for myself, but for others, until this last year. And I'm almost 50 years old, and I've been in recovery for 20 plus years. And that is directly attributable to literally just starting with 10 minutes a day. And Sharon Salzberg gets a lot of credit for that loving kindness meditation. And I'm just kind of crossing the precipice on all that, but it's real. Like that, the level of, I'm almost getting misty-eyed here, just the level of peace and acceptance that I have for myself as a human being is exponentially greater than it's ever been because of this.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And so that's why I've been thinking about this, just kind of leading up to this conversation. Like, I feel kind of silly saying this, but like, I can't say that I'm a Buddhist because I don't know enough to know, like, when does that happen? Do I get a badge? Like, do I, how does that work?
When do we get the patch, Mary?
Or whatever, like, I don't have a Sangha besides Joel, although I do kind of in the recovery community. I just wouldn't call it a Sangha because it's not technically Buddhist. I have the fellowship, right? And we're all kind of on that, sort of on a spiritual path, but this is a different thing that is really, really just blown the lid off the possibilities for my life. I feel like in the last year, in the year 2020, in the middle of a global pandemic, my life is wide open and it's the best it's ever been simply because of this. Go figure. all because of asking Joel a question about impermanence on a bike ride a year ago.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Like, really, like, and that was a really vulnerable moment for me because I knew that he had been doing this for a while and I had watched his aura change. Like, I just literally watched his demeanor change, and there's got to be something to this. So that's kind of why I started just doing a little meditation. I just said, what is, and it was, I had a vulnerable moment asking my friend of almost 20 years in all seriousness and humility, tell me about impermanence. Right.
Beautiful.
And he just did. And that's maybe something you haven't picked up on, is that Joel and I have been through a lot together over the years.
We have.
And so
like Steve and I are like we're sober running buddies from day one for the most part.
Awesome.
But that was a thing where like we've known each other a long time and we've been through a lot, but it was, and I don't even know if I've told you this, Joel, that like it was a real, like I really had a moment of like, do I cross this precipice and ask this question? Right? Like that was a real thing that went through my head. Is like I almost didn't.
Yeah.
Next level. That's next level. And
Mary, can you address that as sort of the official teacher in the room? What is that? There's not a Rubicon to cross. I mean, what does it mean what is the difference between sort of just practicing mindfulness, maybe sitting here and there, and actually committing to a path, a chosen path? And when is it okay to call yourself that? I mean, are there any hard and fast rules that you teach?
No, in my practice, I don't always call myself a Buddhist either. I'm not crazy about labels, and I say I'm a practitioner. I teach Buddha Dharma. I practice Buddhism, but sometimes I say I'm a Buddhist, sometimes I don't say I'm a Buddhist. So it's a label.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about it. I think it's an internal commitment. I mean, because I have seen the dramatic transformation in my life, I have seen the dramatic transformation in other lives. Steve, you're talking about it. You have had a dramatic transformation in your life, and you came to that because you saw the transformation in Joel's life. So that, that continuation of awakening and liberation, even on a little scale, is how this works. And so I don't know if there's a river to cross, but for me, I started doing it, and then I was just hooked, and then it's like I've gone too far to turn back. So maybe I've crossed the river without even being aware of it, but I can't not do it. It's like when you can't unsee something. I mean, sure, I could, put a bag over my head and live in a closet, but it just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't make sense in my world that I would want to walk away from this.
Because from my experience, I'm kind of in that spot where I'm kind of like, how did I get here? Like, I am. Yeah. It would be really hard for me to go back over the spikes, because if I were to turn around and back up over the spikes, I'd tear my tires up. So there's this moment of like, well, there's momentum here. And if you're with yourself throughout your whole experience, you can't deny the benefits, because you've celebrated them, you've honored them, you've shared them. It's like, these things are true. And I can't wish them away or believe them away or sweep them under the rug, because the benefits I feel, it's a somatic feeling that I can't undo that, because it's just true, because I've observed it, which is part of the practice, so it works like that. Yeah.
And what was I going to say when you're talking about it? You've seen it, and I don't remember.
Oh, well, isn't that great?
Well, it must Joel was talking, it reminded me, that's very similar to the recovery experience.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a parallel there. It's like, I can't, like, why would I go back to that old life? Oh, right. Because that's what I do when I'm not in recovery.
Yeah. Right.
And that's where the difference lies, is that there's a powerlessness about addiction that maybe doesn't apply to Buddhism.
I don't know. I can get pretty hooked. I mean, if you give me away from practice long enough, I'll get hooked on video games, sugar, chocolate,
It doesn't mean we don't get hooked, but I think there's this awareness that I know there's a different way. And right now, maybe I've been doing it a while, because I stop and I go, I've been doing this a while. That's always weird when it creeps up on you. But it's like, there's so much less suffering in my life. The outside really hasn't changed that much. I've been living in the same house for 21 years. I've been married for 30 something years. I mean, stuff is the same,
Isn't that
My
interesting?
22-year-old Honda has 310,000 miles on it. But my internal experience is night and day. Why would I go back to that small, scared person?
Yeah. And have you, I mean, maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience with this, because I am at this point where I'm kind of reinterpreting, and I've talked to other folks, other practitioners in recovery, trying to reinterpret recovery language and Dharma, and how does that all work, and trying to really weigh that out. How is that reconciliation for you, or was there one? I mean, we are also in the Midwest, where a more monotheistic sort of religious bent is sort of more prevalent than, because when I was sober in LA, that was a little different maybe. But can you talk a little bit about maybe the merging of those things, that reconciliation?
Yeah, I came into, I was raised a Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 13 years, because I used to say 12, and then I realized kindergarten. So 13 years. It's asked me why my name is Mary Therese Bernadette. And so, but it never meant anything to me. It never, ever resonated at all, ever. And so when I came into AA, I had no use for God. And my sponsor said, think of God as a group of drunks. I did come to a place of okayness with a higher power, because I didn't have to define it, and I knew it wasn't me. And in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a appendix called The Spiritual Experience. And that's one of my favorite pieces of the big book, because it says a spiritual experience is a shift in perception, a shift in perspective. It's seeing things differently, which is what my experience has always been in recovery. Was like, oh, I'm stuck in my instincts run amok. I want, losing something we have, or not getting, the fear of losing something I have, not getting something I want. I saw that is Buddhism 101 to me.
Yeah, right.
So when I read Pema Chodron, and I read Start Where You Are.
Yeah.
I haven't read it in 25 years, but I don't remember exactly what was in there, because I lent it out and never got it back. But it was like, this is my program. So I was able to be at ease in Alcoholics Anonymous and AA, because of I was able to have a higher power of my understanding, and I didn't have to define it. And then when I came to Buddhist practice, it was like, oh, and I was able to take the match pieces, then put them together and say, these two things flow, take what works and leave the rest.
Right.
That was meaningful to me. And so they live side by side.
I still hold with it. Every time I read or hear the Serenity Prayer, I'm like, that's you can't get more, dharmically sound than that. It's so great. Sorry, Steve, you were going to say something.
I was just saying, for me, it always comes back to, especially in recovery, it's universal spiritual principles.
Yeah.
Like the 12 steps, Bill Wilson, they didn't invent this.
Right.
It took concepts that have been around for millennia.
Right.
Like admit you have a problem. Ask for help with the problem. When somebody offers help that might know what they're talking about, maybe listen to them.
Right.
Clean up your wreckage.
Right.
Continue to take stock. Try not to be a jerk all the time. And if you are, because you might be, then clean it up. And then try to help people.
And realize that your actions have consequences, good or bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's karma.
Oh, and that this too shall pass.
That too. Yeah. It will. Yeah.
It will. Yeah.
And the time is now.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah.
May you find him now.
Now.
It's a direction of
like
where,
right now.
not a command. It's a now.
Oh, Joel, that's so great. I don't know that I've ever thought of that way.
Yeah, when it says
that's good.
May you find him now. It's a direction of where, not a command.
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
That's lovely. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm talking about tonight, teaching a class tonight, and talking about pause. And so I went back, I actually pulled out my big book and looked up that page 86, and it says, when agitated, we pause.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that mindfulness, you know, 4 foundations of mindfulness right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And my therapist who teaches in mindfulness, he talks about this and reminded me of this because in recovery, I hear a lot, do the next indicated right action. And he stopped me and said, what if you thought about it like this? Do the next, do a wise action, like take a wise action. It may not be the best. It may not be the one, and it takes it out of this, like what you said earlier about, I got to do this perfectly or else I'm going to fail. It's like, well, it kind of leaves a little freedom there. It leaves a little wearing life like a loose garment, you know, that if I can choose a wise action now and then see how it goes. And if I need to adjust, I can adjust. Yeah.
Years and years ago, Joel and I and a couple other guys we ran with listened to a guy. Well, you may know who he is, Earl H. From Southern California. And he would talk about, like, he would, and I got to put my mic down. He was like, right here, this is where we got to get right there, right in, you know, I lived my whole life. Everything was just anti-Earl medication. Get me out of right here, right now. And now we got to get right in there. And we would laugh at that and think, gosh, that's so cool. And now here we are 20 years later, like, oh, he wasn't kidding.
Right.
Like, that's the only thing that matters.
And where are your feet?
Yeah.
And I used to put my hand up in front of my face just to stop myself. It's like brakes on.
Yeah. Well, and people will tell you to live in the moment. I tell this to my actors, be in the moment. But if you haven't spent any time in the moment, you don't know where that is.
That's impossible.
And so that's why we practice.
Isn't that the truth? That's like we tell people all the time, well, like, just let it go and just let go and let God and just do the next indicator right thing. And it's like, I've never lived in those spaces ever. Like, how do you do that? And this is like my journey in the last year or so has been a very practical exercise in that. And so that's, I think maybe people that I go to meetings with are sick of hearing me talk about this stuff, but it's like, no, this is actually where the action's at.
Yeah. Yeah. And I maybe Mary, I'd like to pick your brain about one thing as it relates to sort of labels, maybe, and where people start where you are, or what books to read. Like, do you have, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just curious, do you have an opinion, or because there's a lot of conversation about sort of very secular mindfulness or following the Dharma and studying the suttas and practicing as a quote unquote Buddhist. Do you have, are you kind of the school that, you know, whatever gets you there, it's okay? Or do you kind of feel like you kind of need to saddle up with a practice of some sort?
Yeah, I'm not sure, actually. I mean, like MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, is a big entree for folks, and that's kind of been pointed to as the granddaddy of McMindfulness. And I haven't looked closely at this, but I do know, like, the Mindful Awareness Research Center at UCLA is led by Diana Winston, who's a longtime Buddhist teacher, really solid practice. And so everything is Buddhist based except the word Buddhism. And I think the really important part, and you'll probably hear a lot of people say this, is it's not just mindfulness. I mean, that's only one piece of it. Mindfulness is it's just one piece, but it's not going to get you anywhere unless you have the whole package, I think. So if it gets you in the door, fine, but don't stop there. It's the same, you know, if people come to meditation classes at Buddhist centers, but they just stop at the meditation. I find the ethical piece of it to be equally important, if not more so, because that's the ground that allows you to have some ease when you do meditate. Because if you're sitting down and closing your eyes and you've got all this crap you're dragging along with you, you're going to say later, I'm going to go find something better.
So I wanted to address, or at least comment on something. By the way, I really enjoyed your intro to Buddhism a couple of weeks ago. I'm very glad that I popped in on that. But you brought up, like, and I hadn't even I guess I kind of had, but the Nazi Buddhist, right? And like, oh my God, like that's like, how do you reconcile? Then I think, like, in just a brief sidebar, I'm a huge fan of an old rock band called the Grateful Dead. In fact, they were my introduction to spirituality. There, I said it. But like
Pink Floyd.
Oh, sure. Well, there you go. Yeah.
She just showed a tattoo.
Stories about that too. But like, there's a TV talking head person named Tucker Carlson that proclaims that he's a fan of the Grateful Dead. And I'm like, and I immediately thought of that when you showed the Nazi Buddhist guy. I'm like, how does that what? I get a little judgmental about that. And by a little, I mean like just like tons. Because like, how do you reconcile that in your brain and that ethical piece of like to and I'll stop, but it just, that really just inflamed my brain, that it's like, well, and then it's just going back into recovery communities, which is that they're populated entirely by sick people. And some people are more ethical than others.
That's a really excellent question. I mean, well, you have the problem in Myanmar, in Burma, where the Buddhist, Aung San Suu Kyi, who has now been deposed by the coup, but who they've been, committing genocide against the Rohingya Muslims. And so just because it's Buddhism doesn't mean it's, wise and skillful. That's why I think this is where the Buddha's line is: don't believe it just because somebody said it. Investigate it for yourself. Does it lead to suffering both for yourself and for others? And if what you're doing is causing harm to others, then you need to step back. And we're all deeply conditioned, whether we see it or not. There's a monk, Ajahn Sumedho, who's, if you may have heard of him, he was a student of Ajahn Chah, who was a teacher in the Thai forest tradition in Thailand in the last century. And Ajahn Chah told Sumedho, who's an American, that he had to go be the abbot of the monastery in England, Amravati, which is a very big monastery. But Ajahn Sumedho has this blind spot about full bhikkhuni nun ordination. He's like, women, no. And so, because apparently the lineage died out, and so the nuns can't trace their cells back to the Buddha, therefore they can't be fully ordained, and caused a lot of havoc and dissension and divisiveness. And a lot of the nuns left the monastery because it was so impossible to live there. So this man has great wisdom, but this blind spot. There's another monk who I really love, Thanissaro Bhikkhu, Tan Jeff in Southern California, who feels the same way. And it's like very wise and skillful, but not perfect. And I am not. I am not enlightened by any any way, shape, or form. I'm better than I used to be, but I still have my conditioning, deep conditioning. And I think that's how I have to see it. All these people who are out there causing harm, are the last president, Tucker Carlson, this horrible tragedy in Atlanta the other day. They're caught up in greed. They're caught up in hatred. They're caught up in delusion. And I don't wish them harm, but I'm like, we have to put an end. We have to work to end harm where we see it being caused as well. So that's how I deal with that stuff.
And I really appreciate your perspective. I mean, that's one of the things about your podcasts and your talks that I've really appreciated over the last year, specifically this summer, with more civil unrest and civil disobedience and protest and the cry for racial justice. I mean, there is this, I guess, understanding or maybe stereotype of the Buddha, and it's just equanimity, where it's like, well, I'm okay. I'm going to let go of you over there. I'm going to be okay here. You do you there. And how, I mean, but we can look to Thich Nhat Hanh and the engaged Buddhism as a really great example of how to be how to try to do no harm, to try to practice the Dharma, to take those refuges, but also be a citizen, how to be a citizen Buddhist. And can you talk a little bit about that, your experience just as in working with students and teaching over the last year with the pandemic and more? It's not the first time we've had, racial injustice, but with this recent sort of upheaval and the division, how have you danced with the equanimity and social justice?
Well, equanimity means having one of the definitions of equanimity is having the appropriate response. So if you are greeted with, pain and suffering, you have compassion. And there's also this impetus to help. And we practice for the benefit of all beings. In fact, in the precepts, I talk about this a lot. It's not just don't kill. It's like put down your weapons and live with compassion throughout the world, and to work to end suffering where you see it. So if you see injustice, it behooves you to do what you can. Not all of us can go into the streets. Not all of us can do everything, but we do what little bit we can. We educate ourselves. We talk to our friends. We write letters. Whatever it is, whatever it looks like for you, that it can be very personal. But to really say, "Am I doing what I can to end this injustice?" And I use the Eightfold Path as my foundation, because that's the wise action is in there. And it's about meeting the world with kindness and compassion, but, not idiot compassion. I think that's Pema Chodron's phrase. We're not that, it's okay, equanimity, blah, blah.
Right.
No, it's like, it's accountability. It's absolutely accountability. Brene Brown talks about that. She says people think when you hold people accountable that you're being mean and nasty, and you're saying, no, I'm just holding you accountable. So it's all about accountability as well, and not letting people cause harm.
Right.
And listening, I'm a Brene Brown fan, and your last couple of podcasts had me thinking about like this idea of skillfulness, which is like, what a revolutionary concept to live like in a skillful way. That just reframes everything. But and then to live in a way that doesn't cause harm to anybody. And I was thinking about like, being well-intentioned, like when I was using and was really just sick, like I didn't do that completely. Like I was so, just selfish and self-centered that I knew that I was causing people harm. I knew that I was causing suffering, but I also knew that I was going to continue to do it. Right. And that's a really painful way to live. Yeah. And so then to be free, because I had to, right. And so then to have the had to removed and to start to look at, and this is a decades long process now, but to actually live in a way that doesn't harm others. Like that's the line. That's the rule. Like that's in that term and in this context is a new concept to me. Right? Yeah. It's so, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say that out loud, but on a level like that's true. Yeah. To the very small decisions to very big decisions. Yeah. Like we're in my house, we're analyzing our food consumption and our animal cruelty footprint. Like that's a thing. Just for example. Yeah. And just how that idea has revolutionized how I work with other human beings. Yeah. Again. Right. And so I've lost my train of thought. But there was a point in there somewhere. The point is this is all really great.
Well, when you start, I mean, like back to something that Mary said about if you're only gonna meditate so that you can be better at, there's army generals that are meditating to be better generals.
Productivity,
right? Yeah. Productivity meditation. If you look at the Eightfold Path, and I was talking to my Sangha last night about right livelihood and right speech, and when you think about the whole wheel, it becomes this whole other revolutionary way to live, the shift in feeling and outlook versus just, I'm going to do this to make me better. It opens the scope, and that's all. That's my point.
When Joel's brother Colin was
Mhm.
kind of one of my early examples of, well, Buddhism, just
Yeah.
kind of the way he lived and the way he exists. I'll say exists. He's a present person. He's still
Sure.
with us,
Mhm.
but he always just had this way of carrying himself that was full of humor and insight, and has a way, I haven't seen him for a while, of just, I don't know if wisdom's the right word, but very clearly seeing situations and articulating a solution or a path just very simply and kind of with no effort. And what was the point? Gosh darn it. Well, there was something in there.
Well, something about this, walking this path is, there's a revolution that happens in a way.
Skillfulness.
Yeah.
Colin was my introduction to what a skillful person looks like in this context. Just, and I always like, how does he do that? And the answer is, this is how he does that.
Yeah.
Well, there's one other piece to doing no harm, which I think is really difficult for a lot of people. It's doing no harm to ourselves. So it's watching how that storyline in our heads, like you were talking earlier, Joel, about, changing the jobs and the not good enough. And, that same thing I had. And I used to, I say this all the time on the podcast, my favorite nickname for myself was dumbass. And things like that. And or loser. I mean, just those things that in our mind are old thinking, old ideas, things that got implanted, and to stop that and to learn to be compassionate. I can have compassion for somebody else much more quickly than I can have compassion for myself. So that was a long journey. That's that undefended heart, that being willing to open up and being willing to be compassionate towards myself. And the interesting part is, the more compassionate I am towards me, the more compassionate I can be towards you. It's so counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
When I started experiencing that level of compassion for other people, it was like, wow, it's when I started, softening and being kinder to myself. Eightfold path right there. Wise speech. You don't get to talk to yourself like that, Mary. Harsh speech gone. Sarcasm gone. I'm like, no, but okay.
These are my favorite things.
Right? It's like, makes me who I am. Yeah. Who will I be? You won't know. And but my question was, do I want to hurt other people? No. Then I have to put that aside. And it's been fine. I haven't missed it. And it still comes out.
Well, yeah, there's something pretty revolutionary, Mary. And I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. When you can be that compassionate towards yourself, then you always have a safe place, that your true home, like what Thich Nhat Hanh talks about. You always have a refuge within. And no matter what anybody is doing, whether that's your spouse, the president, Myanmar, somebody in Atlanta, that you have a safe place within to start from all the time, where every moment of every day, every breath is an opportunity to come home.
That's lovely.
Home. Yeah. And if it can't be there, then you're constantly just giving. You've got that cup empty.
Or protecting. Don't get, no.
Well, and then Mary's website, the undefended heart, right? It's this this opportunity to not put up a wall and to open the rib cage and be vulnerable, be open, and be, have this strength. It's the work you're doing, Mary, is really, really impactful and really gorgeous. And you are of benefit to a lot. You are a benefit to many people. And when I pop in on some morning meditation sometime, and your students, I mean, you are of real benefit to the people around you. And I hope I know that you know that, and I wanted to tell you that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Today is our 1-year anniversary of doing this morning meditation. We've been doing it for 365 days.
Oh, very
Who'd have
good.
thunk it?
how is because you used to just teach sort of, in person in Burbank in LA. How is it been opening it up to Zoom to the world? What has that been like for you?
I've traveled all over the world without getting out of my pajamas. It's been great. It's sad not seeing people, but I've been able to connect with so many more, like, all the folks who come to morning meditation. I never did morning meditation till the pandemic. So that's a whole new thing. I still do my 2 classes a week, but now folks come who are not geographically close. And I taught in Calgary, and I taught in England, and I taught in Nashville, taught in Portland, and I've gone to those places, but now I still get to do it. But just making it open, and I think people are finding that with classes, so much benefit online. I'm getting to take stuff and go on retreats too that I probably would not have been able to do. There is that benefit that comes. So it's good. It's been good for me. I'm really so grateful for this practice in the community. I mean, thinking about the pandemic, A, without being sober, or B, without this practice. No, thank you.
I just went to a 1-year birthday party last night over Zoom of somebody who got sober a year ago today. And that was like right around the time lockdown happened here in Nebraska. And it's just everywhere. It's beautiful. Well, I mean, I'm really glad to know that your teaching, your experience, your expertise is being shared with a wider audience. And, our listeners can go to Mary's website and join up a Zoom class, take some classes and sit with Mary. It's really, I've done it a couple of times, and it's such a joy. It's such a gift. We're getting close to the end of our time, Mary, and I want to make sure as we get close, because I know Steve has a hard out here to go do some family stuff. I want to know, you're a Mets fan, right?
Oh, please. Oh my God. You did that on purpose, didn't you?
I did. I totally did.
I did not see that coming.
What do you think?
Should I get my Yankee paraphernalia? It's like right here. No, I grew up going to baseball. No, I'm a New Yorker, but I'm a Yankee fan.
Yeah, I knew
that.
A
lot of. Is that a Cubs thing I see?
Oh yes, yeah. This is my Chicago Cubs koozie. That's holding my sparkling water. So.
And I'm also an Angels fan because I live in LA, and I'm an American League person. And the Dodger Stadium's like 15 minutes away, and I go there and root for the other team.
Very. That'd be like if I was on the South Side. I'd just go to see White Sox games to root for whoever's playing against the White Sox.
Exactly. That's what I do with the Dodgers.
What are you listening to these days, Mary? What music? What are you listening to? What are you into?
Interestingly enough, I've started listening to. I found a medieval folk group. Well, they're German, but they do like neo folk medieval stuff. Yeah, I like. Cage the Elephant came into my head. I really love them.
Yes.
I'm not way up on a lot of stuff. Alicia Keys fell into me. What are your all times? I know you have a Pink Floyd tattoo.
I have
Pink Floyd was my first tattoo, and then I have another Pink Floyd tattoo, and this is my Tom Petty tattoo.
Nice.
So my top 5 are Pink Floyd, The Beatles, Tom Petty, The Cure, and Social Distortion.
Very good.
Social D.
Yeah,
very good.
I've seen Social D like 23 times.
I got to see them for the first time a couple years ago, and what a show. What a show.
I got to see them open for Neil Young in like 1991 and Crazy Horse, and that was just
long time ago. Woo! That was awesome. I saw them. That was the first time I saw, not opening, but in 91 was the first time I saw them.
I would love, and when this is all over, Mary, I'll fly out to Burbank. We'll go see Social D together.
Oh yes.
I would love that.
Or I'll come to Nebraska because they play everywhere.
Yeah, please come to Nebraska. We'll bring you out here. What are you what are you reading these days? What are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm reading all kinds of stuff. I'm reading a lot of The Body Is Not an Apology, Still Here, My Grandmother's Hands, and then I love murder mysteries.
Nice.
And my old boss, Andre Hardy from Against the Stream, is a noir guy, so and hard boiled detective person. So he sends me all kinds of stuff. So
very good. I every once in a while I have to pull out my Raymond Chandler stories and just kind of get lost in the old LA. So
yeah,
that's
good
great
stuff. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Mary, what
Thank
a
you
gift.
so much.
What a
It's been a
joy.
blast.
Yeah.
And informative and just really nice.
Yeah. May your work continue to be of benefit to you and to us and to everybody. And anybody that's listening, please find Mary on what are all the things what are all the channels that you have? You have an Instagram, but how can we find you? How can we connect?
MaryStancavage.org is my website, and then Mary Stancavage on Facebook, Twitter, Mary Stan55 on Instagram and Twitter, and that's pretty much where I am. And then and then my podcast is on everything: Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, everything.
All the things.
I think it's my name. You can search that my name and you'll find it.
So. Yeah,
we'll put some links up.
Anybody
YouTube, I'm now uploading my videos on YouTube.
Oh, very good. Cool. We'll find that. We'll push those out and go to Mary's website and, have a morning sit with Mary. And if you're in Lincoln, it's only at 9. It's not at 7, how she does it on the West Coast. It's a little more palatable. So
sure.
What a joy, Mary. I've been looking forward to this. What an honor. What a joy. You are welcome back to our podcast anytime. And I can't wait to sit in person with you someday.
Looking forward. Thank you so much, and good luck with the podcast. It's awesome. You two are doing a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I'm so happy you're doing this. It's so much fun. Chunky peanut butter.
Okay, and with that, thanks, Mary.